This is your spiritual game plan, and I'm your host, 𝒉𝒐𝒏 𝒔. Change. It happens to all of us. You've invested your time and energy into an important role, sometimes for years. Then suddenly it's time for you to move on. Maybe you've worked hard on a dream, and now your path is taking a new turn, but the dream isn't going with you. Perhaps you've raised your kids and they've moved on, but now your empty nest is filled with parent care. Or maybe you're in the middle of diaper changes and laundry piles. If you find yourself asking questions like, where do I fit in anymore? Am I even relevant? How do I find my purpose now? You are in the right place. This is the show for women in a season of transition. I believe that while your roles in life will change, your purpose is eternal. I'm here to help you understand just how intentionally you were created by a creator with a game plan. Through interviews and inspirational guests, we'll discover ways to help you unlock the purpose God's placed in you, develop a game plan for your life's calling, and embrace the intentional masterpiece you were created to be. Today, I am talking with 𝒖𝒓 in part 2 of 6 things every empty nest parent needs to let go of. 𝒖𝒓 is an author and speaker who is passionate about relationships. She founded Hearts at Home, a national organization that served moms for 24 years. Now Jill speaks to thousands of men and women each year about their priorities, their passions, and their purpose. I hope you were able to listen to part 1, as today we go on into part 2 with the last 3 things that every empty parent needs to let go of. So now we're going to jump into part 2. So thanks for joining me again, Jill.
Absolutely. It's so good to be with you again.
So I was listening to a talk show host one day, and she told her caller that every time that she took control over a situation for her child, that she was actually robbing her child of a victory. And that really impacted how I think when I perceive that my kids need my help.
Yes.
And it's so easy with my experience and my connections and my comfort in the ability that I could just do it and get it done, that to just jump in and do it. But what I'm actually telling my adult child is that I'm saying that I don't think they can do it, and that I don't trust their ability to do it right, or even worse, I might be doing it to prove to them that I'm still needed. That was hard to say. So we're going to start off with number 4 of what we need to let go of, and that is our children's problems. And so am I right in understanding that some of our children's problems could actually stem from us not letting go and letting them handle it sooner?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And this is where the moms that haven't yet launched their kids could actually start really beginning to let go. And this is hard for us because it's really hard for us to watch our kids struggle. We want to get in there and we want to relieve them of the struggle, but it is not how they learn, and it's not how they grow. You know, when my kids were little, we watched, I was homeschooling for a short season, and we actually had an incubator with some eggs, some fertilized eggs, and we watched those chicks hatch. And the instructions that came with the eggs said, once the chicks start to peck out of the shell, do not help them. Do not even take away a piece of shell. And I just remember, watching it, and it was hard. They would peck for, a couple minutes, and then they would stop and they would rest. But what I learned is that pecking was actually strengthening them, and it was giving them the strength to actually be able to live life. And that's the same way with our kids. They are pecking their way into independence, and they are really, it's hard to watch them. They're growing tired. They're weary. They're frustrated. They make mistakes. My friend Brenda Yoder, who wrote also a book on, it's called Fledge. It's helping your kids launch. And she says, I love the phrase she says, don't steal the struggle. And that's exactly what happens is we steal from our kids when we swoop in and try to fix it. We steal that struggle, and what we need to do is let them struggle. So it's hard, it really is, but it's very, very important. And a way that you can begin this is even in just some responsibility things. For instance, when your kids start driving, I do believe that they need to pay for a portion of their driver's insurance. Mm-hmm. Even if it's just 10% of it. I don't care. You know, maybe they don't have much of a job, or, you know, but even if they work for a, you know, money that you pay them, or they work around the house and then they pay a portion of it back, that is a struggle of life. Okay. It's a struggle of life. If your adult kids move back in with you for a season of time, I think they need to pay some rent. And it doesn't have to be market value, but it's something that says, hey, where you live costs money. And so you're going to play a part of that. When our kids get in trouble, when they overspend, or when they, you know, maybe get in trouble with the law. Honestly, one of the best things that we can do is not bail them out. Literally, sometimes that may be the situation, not bail them out. And that's hard for us, but it's important because they probably need to sit in that consequence and feel it so that they can learn from it.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing, is watching them sit in it.
It is
so hard, but yeah, they have to do it. They have to, it's a gift to them.
Yes.
It's hard for us, but we have to do it. So, okay, I have to admit, when I saw the next one on the list, before I listened to your podcast and I saw the sixth, this number 5, I really had to look at, like, what does she mean by that? Because you said, let go of our idols. And so I wasn't quite sure what you were going to say, but I have to admit that I had to take a hard look at my heart on this one.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned a situation with your son, and the first thing you thought was, what are people going to think?
Yeah.
And I think I think every parent thinks that, but I think that. And then you're saying, well, that's an idol of pride. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, wow. So what are some other idols that we have as parents?
Yeah, this is really important because this is where our heart gets really tangled up. And we become entangled into our kids' success or their failure. And that is not the way that God designed it to be. I mean, I want you to think about it. God has millions of children, and they are at all different levels of success and failure. And who he is not entangled into that, right? And so in the same way, so some of the idols that we struggle with is we struggle with the idol of worry, and it is an idol. I mean, I once heard somebody, I wish I knew who said this. I once heard them say that worry is the worship of our circumstances. And I was like, whoa, I didn't realize I was worshiping my circumstances by worrying, but it really is. So that's an idol. And so that is a place where we really have to, and as mamas, I mean, it's like we have a doctoral degree in worry, right? And then you add, you know, the kids are out and they're away and you still worry. So that's an idol. Control is an idol. Our need to control their decisions, our need to control how they represent the family, our need to control how we feel, how they make us feel. I mean, all of that just gets all messed up. Our identity, we can completely place our identity in the wrong things, and that becomes an idol. So, that moment where you do think, what are people going to think? That's your first clue. That's your red flag. You got the idol of pride. You have you're struggling with an identity idol in that. Because here's the deal. No matter what your kids do, no matter what they look like, no matter the color of their hair, okay, none of that defines you. Your God defines you. And he is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Now, your child's hair color may change yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The way they dress may change yesterday, today, and tomorrow. They may have a job, had a job yesterday, they don't have one today, and they have a new one tomorrow. All of that does not define you. And so we've got to let go of those idols, because here's the deal. If we don't get to this at the heart issue, then we're really going to have trouble letting go of opinions, because we can't pray, don't say, because I'm set to get you to do what I want you to do so I feel good about myself. That is not healthy at all. And no child should be under that kind of pressure.
Yeah, that is a lot of pressure. And which, listening to this, takes me right into the sixth one that you say I can let go of. And it's really hard because as I'm listening to the first five, I'm like, oh, I failed at this. Oh, I failed at that. But you kind of end the list with one that's a little bit encouraging, a little bit nice. It's a nice one to try and let go of. And I say try. And that is guilt, letting go of guilt. And you say that as a layered piece. Because we do look back and say, I wish I had, I wish I hadn't, I should have, I shouldn't have done that. And it's like an emotional merry-go-round that I'm on. And so you kind of give us a nice pat on the back and say, okay, you need to let go of guilt. But how can you encourage us to do that on a second-by-second basis?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the phrase I preach this one to myself, I deal with it myself, is I have to say, I did the best at that time with the knowledge and experience that I had. And that is true. I mean, do we all have places where we wish we could go back and do it over again? Oh my gosh, every one of us, because quite frankly, we didn't know what we were doing, right? We were making this thing up as we went along. And then we'd have one, if you had more than one child, then, you would think, oh, good, I've got this down pat. But then the next child comes along and they have a different personality and they respond to life differently. And so there's different challenges and all of a sudden you're making it up again, So I have to say, I did the best I could with the information I had at that time. So that is a place where we really need to let ourselves off the hook with that. Maybe we realize, you know what, I do wish I'd handled that better. And maybe we need to clean that up with our kids. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just going to your kids and saying, you know what, when I think back to X, I now wish I had done this. And I just want to apologize for whatever you feel like was, not appropriate or that you wish you could have handled. I mean, honestly, that is relationship growing. So own it if you want to own it. Learn from it, by all means, learn from it, but we've got to let it go. But, sometimes it's not even a situation where you wish you'd handled it differently. I just dealt with mom guilt not too long ago. My son had his first baby, and the night he was born, or the night she was born, I get a text from his wife, who's like, 4 hours postpartum. And she sends me this side-by-side picture of her baby picture and then their new little 4-hour baby. And she said, hey, will you send me a newborn picture of Austin? And I was like, sure. I looked for 2 hours for a newborn picture of Austin.
Oh, no.
And I just want you to know, Sherry, I couldn't find one. And still to this day, I mean, I have boxes and boxes of photos, okay, you know, because I raised kids way before we were doing digital.
Yep.
And so I don't know. I did find one when he was a couple of months old, but I couldn't find a newborn picture of him. So anyway, his wife, I mean, bless her heart, she was so sweet. She goes, we were later talked and she said, yep, I told Austin, yep, you're number 5, definitely. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I felt guilt for that. I really did. I was like, I felt terribly guilty. But then I had to here's what I've learned. You got to replace guilt with grace. So I had to go, Lord, keeping track of the photos for 5 kids. I haven't had time to go through them now that they're all gone. And you know what? I'm going to give myself some grace on that. Yeah. So thank you for the grace that you give me. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to just apply that to my heart right now.
That's so awesome. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I need to do that too. I don't want to say I only have 3 kids, but after listening to your 5, I only have 3 kids. And my first 2, I'm not a scrapbooker. And at the time that my first 2 were born, everyone was doing those creative memories. And I tried to do it. I just couldn't stand it.
Me too. I was the same.
Oh, sorry if anyone likes doing that. It's just not my personality.
No.
So I tried. So my first 2 have a creative memories album for their first year. And then they have albums preceding that. And they have the baby journals of their first this. And my 3rd kid has a box.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yep. That's the way it is.
Yes. But I gave myself grace on that one quite a long time ago when I said, I'm not going to punish myself trying to put these albums together just so I can have one on my coffee table like all the other moms.
Right.
Do it.
Right.
I want to take a little bit of a pivot or leverage on the same topic and wondered, these are such great points for parents in the midst of parenting, those of us that are empty nest, but I think some of these could be applied to some of my listeners that, like you have mentioned, called themselves in a sandwich generation. Mm-hmm. And they're having to let go of these things with their kids, but now they're either getting they're getting their parents in their home or they're in charge of care.
Yes.
How can some of these same steps help them in this transition?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's, I would say, in, some huge ways, expectations. I mean, let go of expectations, my father passed away just a little over a year ago, and his health was really failing the last 1.5 years of his life. And so all of a sudden I was finding myself, I had, even though all my kids were grown and out of the house, they had, they were having babies, and I felt like, okay, I need to help them with, these new lives. But then my parents were needing me, and my parents lived 2.5 hours away. So I was feeling like I was sandwiched in between the needs of one generation and the needs of another. And so I really had to, I had to let go of some expectations first of myself, and also letting go of some expectations of my mom or my parents. I saw, particularly with my dad, a little bit of role reversal, and that was hard to feel like I was kind of, instead of him leading me, I was leading him now. And so I think we have to do that, let go of guilt, certainly, as we deal with our parents. There may be some places where guilt wants to creep in, and that's where, there's always guilt in life, because the enemy, the accuser, wants to point his finger and go, look, you did this, or you didn't do that. And so we really have to replace that with grace on a regular basis. Letting go of traditions, that's going to change as your parents get older. So I think, that is one of the beautiful parts of the empty nest, though, is that as you get to a place where your children don't need you as much on a day-to-day basis, your parents may need you, and you may enter into what I call the ministry of availability. And last summer, when my dad was not doing so well, I mean, I just kept a bag packed all the time. And I would, just really quickly be like, okay, I have got to, be ready to, at the drop of a hat, my mom would say, hey, he's in the hospital. And I just, within 15 minutes, take off. So, sometimes you got to do that. And that's part of that sandwich generation.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Those are such great tips. And like I said, I know they apply to empty nest, but they really apply on either end, in the middle of parenting and then now switching roles with your parents. And I really think that those 6 steps are so key in the title of your book, Having an Empty Nest but a Full Life. I think that's the key to it. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us. And every way to get in touch with you is going to be in the show notes. I love your podcast, No More Perfect.
Yeah.
It's really...
I'm so glad. Thank you. I'm loving doing it as well. So yeah. And I have a whole website just for the Empty Nest book. So emptynestbook.com. So it's the best place to go and just get all kinds of resources.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me in part 2 of 6 things every empty nest parent needs to let go of. Number 5 is one that really impacted me a lot. Letting go of our idols. I had never thought about it in the way that Jill presented. I would love to hear which one of the 6 things was the hardest for you to comprehend or the most helpful as a tool to help improve a relationship in your home. If this message blessed you and you know another parent that would be blessed, please share it. And if you missed part 1, be sure and go back. You will not want to miss that episode. I would be very grateful if you would subscribe to Your Spiritual Game Plan so that you don't miss other great guests. Please leave a rating and an honest review. All of the links for you to connect with Jill and her message will be in the show notes. Ways to connect with me are also in the show notes. I hope you'll be back next week for another great episode of Your Spiritual Game Plan.